Morning and welcome to the program. We're here till midday. Our number, if you'd like to join us, is 0800 80 1080. The email is Leighton at newstalksabe.co.nz. And you can text on 9292. I've just left a discussion. In fact, I was very late in here. I've only just got my headphones plugged in time. Just left a discussion over a matter that has been the subject of much mention of late and in the news this morning. Yesterday, day before yesterday, when Donald Trump made his speech, he singled out one particular aspect of life, among many, I suppose, but this was the subject of opioids and opioid deaths. And, of course, we've got the Medical Journal this morning making comments about New Zealand, and if you do a little digging, a little searching, you'll find all sorts of stories relating to New Zealand. Now, I was... I suppose I'd have to say unaware of the attention that it suddenly seems to be getting in this country. You know, one could easily be lulled into thinking that this is an American problem, as so many things are. You know, drugs and this, that, and the other. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. In this day and age, everything happens. Might start in America, might be bigger in America, but it happens, whatever it might be, generally, it happens in other parts of the world, if not all over. Why? Because that's the way things work these days. And so we've now got doctors being concerned, pardon me, doctors being concerned to some considerable extent about opioids and an opioid death epidemic. Now, I want to I have a bit of understanding of this. There's two stories I'm going to relate to you. But first, the New Zealand Medical Journal today says fatal overdoses have been skyrocketing in the US as Americans now consume 80% of all opioids made in the world. You see what I mean about America. It's led to there being 4 times as many overdose deaths in 2015 as in 1999, with more than 60% of these involving opioids. Originally thought to be caused by doctors handing out too many drugs, the rise in prescription abuse has also been accompanied by a rise in the use of illegal drugs such as heroin and illicit fentanyl. The author of the article, this is in the New Zealand Medical Journal, Paul Morrow, says the American experience may be a warning for New Zealand after local opioid-related deaths jumped between 2001 and 2012, jumped 33%. Now, you can talk about percentages all you want. It's the numbers that you must correlate them with. See, if it went from 1 to 3, that's nothing. That's margin of error stuff. But if the figure was substantial, and if there was a trend, and if you were tracking it, then it would be more alarming. So I'm intrigued to know this morning, from those of you who take painkillers in particular, the details of your own local experiences, the details of why you're taking things, and and I'm not trying to construct something here. Well, I am, I suppose, but I want to get a handle on just how widespread it is in this country, because it's not illegal. Opioids are not illegal. They are prescription drugs. Now, you can get fake drugs, you can get illegal drugs, and then you get the combination. And that's what they were just mentioning in what I quoted. But in the interim, you've got these drugs that are being developed for various things, for pain-killing in particular. And there is a danger in them, both in intentional and accidental overdosing. Let me quote you something about Tom Petty, who is believed by his family died of an accidental opioid overdose. His body suffered from many serious ailments, including emphysema, knee problems, and most significantly, a fractured hip. Despite this painful injury, he insisted on keeping his commitment to his fans, and he toured for 53 dates with a fractured hip, and as he did, it worsened to a more serious injury, as it would. On the day that Tom Petty died, he was informed that his hip had gradually had graduated to a full-on break. And it was our feeling, this is the family, our feeling that the pain was simply unbearable and was the cause for his overuse of medication. We knew before the report was shared with us that he was prescribed various pain medications for a multitude of issues, including fentanyl patches, and we feel confident this was, as the coroner found, an unfortunate accident. Now, he had multiple drugs, several of which were opioids, multiple drugs in his system when he died, including fentanyl, oxycodone, temazepam, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 others as well, without running through them, because some of the names are a bit obscure. So he had lots of different drugs in his system. There was no reason, it appears, that he would have killed himself intentionally. But the pain that he would have been in, and this is what, this is linked, by the way, to cannabis, medicinal cannabis. You can't ignore this. There's a link here. There were numerous drugs in his body, and Tom Petty died. Let's just accept it was an accidental overdose because he couldn't cope with the pain. Now, you could say all sorts of things. He should have had his hip done to and all the rest of it. That's irrelevant in the greater scheme of things. In this day and age, we think that we can get instant rectification of anything that's wrong with us. I've mentioned this before. You know, it doesn't matter whether you've, whatever it is you've got, there's something to fix it. Whether it's an operation, whether it's a new drug or an old drug or whatever it might be, you go to your doctor and you say, I've got this problem. They have a look at you and agree and here, take this. And you're okay. It might be you've got to take it forever, but you're okay. Now, that relieves the pressure on individuals to either rectify the situation themselves by changing lifestyle. Because why do you need to change your lifestyle if you've got a drug that eliminates the problem? Or at least you believe it does. Or suppresses it. Or takes away the pain, the agony, whatever. And one of the reasons we're all living longer, of course, is because these drugs have, amongst other things, new operations, etc., new discoveries, allow us to continue living the way we want to live while taking something that fixes it. Or at least we believe that it does. Opioids. When I first heard the term, I thought it sounded like some sort of artificial intelligence, robot. An opioid. We're being overrun by opioids. It's a different thing altogether. More after the break. 0800 80 1080.
This week's Hot
News Talks to me. It's 12 to 9. Addressing the crisis. This is the end of the article on Tom Petty. Now, let me go back a bit. In 2016, this is America, of course, there were nearly 64,000 drug overdose deaths in the US, an all-time high, 2016. And at least 2/3 were linked to opioids. The rise in drug overdose deaths was a big reason that life expectancy fell for the second year in a row in the US, which had not happened since the early 1960s. And the early data suggests that 2017 was worse. According to prelim figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were nearly 67,000 drug overdose deaths in the 12-month period through June 2017. Addressing the crisis, experts say, will require tens of billions of dollars. As I previously explained, says the writer, the author, we have a pretty good idea of what those resources should go to. They could be used to boost access to treatment, particularly highly effective medications for opioid addiction. Pull back lax access to opioid painkillers. By the way, when I did a quick search on this morning, it was very quick. I just wanted to see some headlines. One was headed, "Here's how easy it is to buy opioids online." I have no idea whether it's easy here or not. None, I don't. Why would I? They could be used to boost access to treatment, pull back lax access to opioid painkillers while keeping them accessible to patients who truly need them, and adopt harm reduction policies that mitigate the damage caused by opioids and other drugs. Until the country does that, it can expect more and more overdose deaths. Now, one presumes that they're talking specifically accidental overdose. rather than intentional, although they will be used, of course, by people who willingly want to terminate their lives even though they don't need to. Because if you can, that's just one other way of doing it. Now, my experience, and for those of you who've heard it before, here it is again. 1999, Austin, Texas, went to the Willie Nelson July 4 concert. My sister met me at the airport. We're standing by the carousel, and my suitcase went by, and I launched at it from the wrong angle and wrenched my back badly. And that was a Friday. Long weekend, public holiday, and I didn't get to see a doctor until the Tuesday. I was in agony. And I went to her doctor, and I said, I want to see because there you have to get a referral. I want to see an osteopath. And he said, no, wouldn't do it. Wrote me a prescription for codeine. I took it and couldn't wait to get into it. I'm telling you, it was bad. And once I was on the codeine, I was in heaven, or close enough to it. And I came out of the prescription period knowing how easy it is to get hooked on drugs like that. It was obvious to me how many people, I was going to say some, but many people get hooked. It's just that simple. It was beautiful. I've never taken any since, and I don't want to. But if I needed to, I would. But you take them because you need them. You keep taking them because you think you need them, even though you mightn't. And before you know it, you're hooked. But for those who keep taking them because they need them, and the pain still gets worse, they end up accidentally overdosing and doing what Tom Petty did. Now, the concern, of course, here by the New Zealand medical establishment is that we're in line for the same sort of problem. So I'm interested to know from you what you take, what it's for, what your problems are, and whether or not you have any concerns either for yourself or anybody else, and do you understand why the medical fraternity is concerned the way they are, and are they justified in doing so? We like to distinguish ourselves from other places, like the United States. It's only there, it won't happen here. I learnt long ago that that's not true. 0800 80 1080, email is Leighton at newstalkzb.co.nz, text on 9292.
News Talk ZB Auckland. Time saver traffic.
Let Countdown do the shopping for you this year. Good morning. The Northern Motorway city-bound heavy bit easing Greville through to Esmond, to the southwestern northbound heavy Lambie Drive through to Massey, the northwestern slow Westgate through to Royal, again coming in from Te Atatu, the southern city-bound heavy East Tamaki through to Ellerslie, moderate through Newmarket. Want more free time this year? Shop online at countdown.co.nz. Ivanka Zonich for Time Saver Traffic.
Lawn Master, mastering New Zealand backyards since 1946. Designed and engineered for excellence. Lawn Master knows New Zealand, therefore our products are for New Zealand. Be your own master with the full Lawn Master range. Proudly brought to you by Steelfort. Visit steelfort.co.nz for your local stockists today.
Escape to the chic outdoors. Design Concepts of Takapuna specialise in premium outdoor furniture, built along sleek, modern lines with durable, high-quality materials. With fully customisable options and accessible prices. There's no reason not to transform your outdoor space into a stylish retreat today. Design Concepts, premium outdoor furniture. Barry's Point Road, Takapuna. designconcepts.co.nz.
If you're heading to see the Sky City Breakers play at Spark Arena, remember that travel on trains and Northern Express bus services is included with your game ticket. Visit at.govt.nz/events for more information.
The Smith & Co.'s sale is on now.
Save up to 50% in all stores. Queen Street, Newmarket and online.
On now. Some exclusions apply.
The Smith & Co.'s sale.
Get these fresh picks for summer this long weekend at Palmer's. Tropical hibiscus, now $12.99, save $6. There's 25% off all glazed pots, and grow your own delicious blueberries with 15% off all varieties. Time to go to Palmer's.
Hi, Stephen Hunt from Ian Hunt Flooring. Carpet or wooden floors? I'll make your choice easier at Ian Hunt Flooring, Mount Wellington and Albany.
Making your choice easier, Ian Hunt Flooring.
News talks about it's 5 to 9 from a little note from Australia from Raymond, who says here in Australia, from February 1, they have banned the sale of codeine-based painkillers over the county and must now get a script from the doctor. It's a start to fight opioid overdose. You want to know something? I think that most people are unaware of what an opioid is. Most people are unaware of whether the medication they're taking is an opioid or anything to do with it. If it works, swallow it. Jenny, good morning.
Hello. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about pain. Years ago, my neighbour pulled a chair out from underneath me and I landed on my back, so I had to go and get help with that. And I kept taking painkillers in case I got pain if I went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister-in-law...
So you took them as a preventative before the event?
Yeah. And my sister-in-law set me up a whole lot of Panadol, and I went up the road and I suddenly got violently sick. So someone brought me home. They called the ambulance, came down here, and they checked the Panadol. There was about 500 tablets, and they were all about 6 years old. Stupid woman. So anyway, what I'm doing now, I'm taking turmeric, and I have had no pain for weeks.
You're taking what?
Turmeric.
Turmeric?
Yeah. I've been taking it for
I'm very interested in turmeric. How are you taking it?
By pill. Taking a pill every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had no pain at all. I don't have to worry about walking up the road and knowing I should have taken a painkiller. I've got no pain at all now with that.
Well, that's extraordinary.
It's amazing. I've put up with this pain in my back for years, and I always took painkillers just in case.
Yep, I got the message, but I think that, well, I've got no response. I don't have a response to you over the turmeric.
Mm-hmm.
I know that turmeric is extremely good for you. The fact that it has replaced painkillers and you've had no pain for whatever length of time, I'd be very intrigued on medical advice on that, or some sort of advice as to whether or not you're a freak, and I mean that in the nicest way, of course, as in unusual, or whether it might be universal. 7 after 9. Email is Leighton at newstalksabe.co.nz. You can text on 9292. There's a swathe of local media commentary on this. A news hub, the New Zealand Herald, the Telegraph in the UK, etc., etc. There are fears the fentanyl drug epidemic could spread here from overseas. America is in the grip, blah, blah, we know all that. The article in Friday's New Zealand Medical Journal said fatal overdoses had been skyrocketing in the US as Americans now consume 80% of all opioids made in the world. Well, you might argue that, no, that would be a silly argument. But some people might make it. Well, if they're consuming 80% of it, then we don't have too much to worry about because there's only 20% to go round apart from that. Of course, that's self-explanatory as stupid. It's led to there being 4 times as many overdose deaths in 2015 as in 1999. Originally thought to be caused by doctors, well, we quoted that earlier this morning. There was something I spotted here I wanted to quote you. One step that New Zealand should take now was to create a better reporting system when there was a suspected overdose death. This would involve collecting data from coroners, pathologists, emergency departments and St John Ambulance. It could then act as an early warning system, alerting health authorities if there was a spate of overdose deaths or if a new dangerous synthetic drug had hit the streets. Look, there's no question that New Zealand is right up there on the scale when it comes to taking drugs of whatever kind. Now, you've... don't know what's wrong this morning. Stand by. Pardon me. If you can get your hands easily on legal drugs that will do for you what illegal drugs will do, then why wouldn't you be utilising them? And people do. There's no argument there. It appears to me there is always a good solid base of the New Zealand population that's into drugs, whatever they might be, and they want to try them, they want to experience them, they want to keep taking them as they like them. And if something disappears, something else will replace it. On this particular occasion, it appears to be legal drugs, opioids, but now governments are waking up, as Raymond told me from Australia a little while ago. The Australian government has made opioid-based drugs illegal, not illegal, but not withdrawn from sale over the counter. You now have to have a prescription. And arguably, that should have been the case in the very first place. Wellington Hospital emergency medicine specialist Dr. Paul Quigley welcomed the article. This was in the New Zealand Medical Journal. Welcomed the article, saying American doctors had almost completely created the US opioid crisis by overprescribing the drug. Then some, well, my experience nearly 20 years ago is direct evidence of that. I wanted to go to an osteopath. He just said no, the doctor, and gave me codeine. Ben, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Just want to start off by saying I've been listening to you since I was 26 years old. I'm now 42, and I'm going to miss you next year, so I just want to wish you all the best and whatever you're going to do after this year.
That's very nice of you.
And,
but there's still 10 or 11 months to go, so let's not get...
I know, so I've got 10 or 11 months to prepare myself for it.
Good boy.
But anyway, I'm calling about the codeine because I'm currently using it for the moment for some ligament problems with my ankles, and I went through the process of using Panadol and Nurofen, things like that for a while, and after a while the body just gets used to it, so I went back to my doctor and he's given me a 2-week prescription for codeine, so I'm using that, and I have used it in the past, and I must say, it's a great drug for pain relief, but once you run out of it, you do, or me personally, I kind of feel like, oh, that's a shame, I'm out of that stuff, because it is quite a nice pain relief, and I guess it is kind of addictive, and that's why the doctor only gives me 2 weeks and says we'll go back to using the Panadol and things like that, and what surprises me is when I talk to my friends from America, they're just so shocked at how easily accessible the doctors give it out, or that we can actually go over to our pharmacist and show our ID and get a box of Panadine for about $30 that has codeine in it, so we can, I guess anybody can feed their addiction if that's what they're into.
What did you do to your back?
Oh, sorry, it was my ankles.
I'm sorry. What did you do? Maybe you said that. Why? What did you do to your ankles?
So I rolled my ankles stepping off a curb at work, as easy as that, and just twisted them, and I've just had some ongoing issues with calcium in the bones, and bones in the ligaments and things like that. So the ankles are just weak, and I get pain through my foot, and we're just trying to figure out the root cause. So I'm just going through that process of seeing doctors and
I'm keen to know what effect the codeine had on your mind, on your head, on your brain.
What it makes me feel is that you're kind of just in a very relaxed state, a very, I guess, euphoric kind of state of mind where you're just really relaxed and kind of spaced or high, I guess would be the word. So it's not, I guess, the kind of drug you should take and go to work because you're not going to be able to concentrate too much.
Shouldn't go to work. Shouldn't drive. Shouldn't do anything dangerous.
No, nothing like that at all. I mean, and that's drugs like that, and another one called tramadol that doctors seem to give out quite easily, which is a pretty potent drug. It's kind of like a morphine type of drug. I've had that before for after surgery, and while it's good for managing pain, the come-downs on those kind of drugs, you have flu-like symptoms for a couple of days after you've stopped taking the medicine, and there is a craving to, I guess, get that pain relief, because it just puts your state of mind somewhere else, kind of like you don't really care, I guess is the word. So, yeah, it's not a good drug to take.
That's a very good way to put it. Ben, are you stuck with it forever?
No, I'm managing it. Like, I've only got a few days left of the coating, so I'll be off that. I'll be keen to just stop that, go back to, like, Voltaren and things like that, seeing a surgeon in the next day or two so I can see what my options are to be able to go through physio and understand what pain is and manage it more effectively.
But they can't do anything. They can't. This is what intrigues me. They can't do anything for your ankles to fix it or them so that you'll be okay.
I'm going to find out actually this afternoon what my options are. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with a specialist.
I'd be interested to know.
All right, Leighton.
All right.
Yes.
Appreciate it, Ben. Thanks for the call. 9:16. The fentanyl, by the way. I mean, this is a fair thing to say. Most of us, unless we're involved with something directly, and even if we are, we mightn't care. But we don't know what most of these terms mean until we hear them in the news, and then we might have the nous to look them up or whatever. But fentanyl is not the only heroin-like drug experiencing a boom in users in the US. The country's mushrooming opioid crisis is well documented, with the overall rate of opioid drug overdoses increasing every year since 1999. This owes much, says Dr. Herzberg, to a history of overprescription of painkillers dating back more than 3 decades to the Reagan administration, when tight controls on opioid sales were relaxed. Quote, opioid markets were opened up to a full range of strategic drug companies' use to sell their products. So a large volume of these drugs were pumped into the market without adequate warning about the risks. While data shows a higher rate of overdoses in men, recent research has found the serious health impacts for women are just as severe. News Talks about 20 after 9. Barry, good morning.
Good morning.
Talk to me.
Right, I've been listening to what you've been saying, or the callers, and I thought I'd give a different point of view. The doctors at Auckland and Green Lane Hospital Pain Service have diagnosed what I had as an injury-induced fibromyalgia. So for me, being a layman, they call that highly sensitized nerves. So through 2 injuries, needing painkillers, of course, they compounded 2 separate ones, and I can't feel a bit of my back. Like you could stick pins into certain areas of my back, and there's no sensation there. Some areas are hot, some are cold and clammy. It may be a rare thing. Maybe it's not that common. But I used to take non-dangerous painkillers like, I went through the pain service as well, which are wonderful people at Auckland and Green Lane, and they help you. But I was just one of those people that there's a certain percentage that their exercises and their regime just doesn't work on. Mm-hmm. So I'm the sort of person, when I go to the dentist, I can get injections in my jaw or my gums. Your whole face is numb. You can't feel anything, but I can feel everything. So when the drilling's going on, nothing works. I'm just one of those people. I've been told there's nothing they can do. So I have to manage it. Now, I used to take the lower painkillers like Panadol and Nurofen and things like that. And I took Voltaren at one stage for this, the pain that comes with fibromyalgia, the nerve pain, trying to keep off the stronger painkillers on purpose. But the problem is, over years, the Voltaren actually made me bleed. I think it was in my bowel because I had it for so long. So what we ended up doing, what I was advised to do, I do take tramadol and codeine. This is prescribed, though. This is not just purchased. And paracetamol, that mixture, codeine, tramadol and paracetamol on a daily basis, and I have for years. Now, I haven't had any particular problems with it. I always make sure that I keep well below the dose that I'm supposed to. And when I'm keeping off it, because I need it, but I won't take it, I walk around and I've got the terrible pain and everything, but I'll keep well below the dose I'm supposed to keep to have.
Have you ever reached a point where you have said, I can't cope with this anymore, and you've taken more than you should have?
No, because I'm
Could you imagine?
Well aware of,
could you imagine it?
No, because I can't speak for everyone. So I can't put myself in someone else's shoes. But I've always been quite a fastidious sort of person and a little bit fussy. Like things have to be done. Let's say just around the house, things have to be done in a certain order. So even though I feel I need it, I won't take it. I'll be looking at the clock. Wait. Say you're meant to take it every 6 hours. I'll wait to 8 on purpose, and I'll be putting up with the pain, just using my pressure points on the body to take my mind off the pain that I'm getting. So I may be a little bit different like that, and this pain is all down my right side, and nothing seems to work. The best solution we had was the tramadol and the codeine. I have regular blood tests, by the way, the test from the kidneys and the liver and everything. Everything comes out normal for me, but I manage it quite well. It has to be supervised by a specialist. Like, I get a script from the doctor, but also at Auckland Hospital, where I was there yesterday.
But you're stuck with this for life, right?
Apparently so. But specialists keep an eye on me too. It's not just the GP write the script. It's actually the chaps that are earning $500,000 a year. These real specialists, they approve of it as well. So it's not like just going to the chemist. Like, I do believe that tramadol, codeine, and paracetamol, for me, in that concoction, is the only thing that seems to work.
Well,
and
if it works and you need it, then the idea is to take it, I guess. I know people who suffer from various things. A couple of people I'm thinking of suffer from various things, and they've been given medication that they're told they need to take, and they won't take it. And moan and bitch and carry on all the time because of the pain they're in. Barry, I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. 25 after 10, News Talk ZB. Looking at, I think, 3 emails now with regard to turmeric. I've known for, or believed, or been informed, whichever way you want to look at it, about turmeric for a number of years, but never, until very recently, realised that it's worth further investigation, if you understand what I mean. I'm not trying to take the next step or whatever. Seeking anonymity. No, that was another one. From David. Yes, turmeric is good, but an extract of turmeric, curcumin, is widely believed to both arrest and kill cancer cells without damaging healthy cells. Now, this is not. I'm not claiming this, and I'm always very careful about what I will quote. And he says it's widely believed. One would have to eat a truckload of turmeric to obtain the requisite curcumin. My doctor is a strong advocate of supplements for a variety of conditions, but he insists there is a strong correlation between usage of curcumin and halted or slowed progression of cancer. It certainly worked in the case of my ex-wife, who 6 years ago was given 6 months to live and advised by her doctor to get her affairs in order. Today she has no active cancer. Worth a look. You've got to say, it's worth a look.
Door for an
Use my imagination for that. 28 to 10, News Talk ZB. I'm just looking at a headline on CNN. I'll just save it for the moment because there is some commentary that I want to make a little later. With regard to the division of opinion according to media. The media itself is divided. Linda, good morning.
Morning, Leighton. The question you asked your last caller about was they could imagine taking too many, overdosing on painkillers, and that really resonated with me because I've been in a situation where I possibly did or I've thought about it. A bad night taking tramadol and just wasn't working, writhing in pain with a sciatica problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up phoning the people I was working with. They were on night shift and trying to get them to Google how many I could take without killing myself. But at that point, I was just beside myself and in so much pain that I just probably would have done anything to stop it.
That bad, huh?
Oh, horrendous. Yeah.
So how have you dealt with it?
I had a I would have taken myself to hospital at the time, but I had an appointment at a musculoskeletal specialist. I've been waiting for 10 days, and I didn't want to miss it. So he gave me a cortisone injection, which helped with a little while, but then 3 months later I prolapsed a disc in that side. So I've had operations on my foot, and I've been recovering ever since. But
right, so
in saying that, Leighton, I'm not in pain, which I'm really grateful for.
So what are you taking?
At the time, I took morphine. The tramadol wasn't working, so they gave me morphine to get rid of my pain.
In what way? In pill form?
Yes. Yeah, and that just helped me straight away. But as soon as I prolapsed...
How long for?
I probably took it while I was waiting to get the cortisone. So probably another week or 10 days.
So let me ask you another question. You must have, with all the discussion about it, you must have given some consideration along the way to medicinal cannabis. I don't mean necessarily...
If the pain didn't stop, then the morphine, yes, the pain didn't stop, and I definitely would, yes.
I didn't mean you'd given consideration to literally taking it or trying to find it, but if it was there, would you utilise it?
Yes, I would have done anything to stop that pain.
You would have at least tried it?
Oh, definitely.
I have no idea whether it would have worked or not, but...
tramadol, my previous experience of taking with tramadol was I think it depends where your pain is. I woke up my husband at 4 o'clock in the morning and saying, look, I can touch my nose. I was absolutely out of it. And it gave me a fright, and so I didn't take it for a while, but one night I was in so much pain, I just thought I'd give it another go, and it didn't work for me that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just where your pain is, so it's pretty scary stuff.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Leighton.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
This is not, well, it's not meant to be about people's, history of pain, but that's a side effect, pardon the pun, that's a side effect of the actual reason for having this discussion, which is over opioids and their overuse and accidental deaths in particular, which is a cause of concern to the medical fraternity at the moment. And I see it as a legitimate one, and one that we've got the advantage, if I can jump to a conclusion, we've got the advantage of the experience and history of it in the United States. Better to deal with it before it gets away on us. I had got to the point, writes Shirley, I'd got to the point of not being able to walk properly with various pain sites. A podiatrist sent me to a rheumatologist in Auckland. Immediate diagnosis of stop taking statin pill today and take natural CoQ10 ubiquinol daily. If not pain-free in 6 weeks, come back and see me. At 5 weeks, I was totally pain-free, and years later, I still am. I pay for the natural product, but I certainly won't stop. I pay for the natural product, but I certainly won't stop using it. The difference is living over existing. There's much discussion about alternative medicines and whether or not they work. And there is a vested interest in the pharmaceutical companies in not in dissing them. Some doctors will too. My motto is very simple. If it's legitimate, it's worth a try. If it works for you, take the damn thing, whatever it is. Quite seriously. And that's not an encouragement of taking illegal drugs, though. 22 to 10, numbers 0800 80 1080. And Joanna, good morning.
Good morning. I'm quite surprised to hear people talking about the euphoria they're getting from these painkillers. I've been in hospital a lot and had a lot of pain. And over the years, I've been given morphine, pethidine, Fortral, tramadol, oxycodone. And all it does is, if I'm lucky, relieves the pain. And I feel as if I wouldn't be in any risk whatsoever of being addicted to any of these things. And most recently, I fell and got a compression fracture of a vertebra, which was very painful, and the doctor prescribed oxycodone for that. and with a 12-hour slow-release one and one to take 4 hourly as well. And I took it, and it did relieve the pain, and I knew that this was what they call hillbilly heroin, that is causing huge problems in the US, and so I was quite interested to see if there were any other effects, and there were none whatsoever, and I just stopped taking it when I didn't need it anymore, and I didn't have any problems.
No, all right, so you didn't get addicted to it, and neither you should, but you weren't on it for that long, though, were you?
No, well, I stopped taking it after 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's a short-term fix.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you see, here's my response, that people react differently to different things.
They do.
And I don't know whether you heard my little story, but I'm not going to repeat it again.
I did hear it.
I mean, I can tell you, I can remember distinctly lying in that bed at my sister's place and just not wanting to go anywhere.
Now, I also want to say about medical cannabis.
By the way, I didn't want to go anywhere because I was already there.
Oh.
If you understand what I mean. I was there.
Yeah, you were happy where you were. Yes. Yeah. Now, about medical cannabis, it seems to me that people don't seem to understand that medical cannabis is quite different from ordinary cannabis, and I hear people.
Well, we should know that by now.
Well, but they don't appear to, because medical cannabis is not an intoxicant, it's not addictive, and all of these things. So, why is there any fuss about it? I don't understand.
I'll tell you why there is from the perspective that I understand anyway, and that is because it's a foot in the door for legalising recreational cannabis.
I don't see why it should be. I think they're two completely different things.
No, well, they're called the same. It's a cannabinoid. It's got the look. Once, inch by inch, step by step, which is something I truly believe when it's applicable to anything. Or it is applicable to almost anything.
Yes, yeah.
And once you get to that stage, you've got that, and what you've got to remember is that people's perception, and that's what you're talking about, people's perception is that, well, if it's okay for that, then it's okay for the rest of it. And the difference in the medicinal aspect of it, the product, doesn't register that well.
But to use that same argument, you've got, say, morphine and codeine, which you could argue are similar in the way that medicinal cannabis and yet they're treated differently by the medical profession. You used to be able to just go and buy a codeine over the counter, but you certainly couldn't buy morphine over the counter. And so I actually don't really see
because they're things that are prescribed by doctors. They're things that are manufactured by pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, well, that's
and they have a legitimacy about them.
Yes, but I think medicinal cannabis should be like that. I think it should be manufactured.
Well, it may very well be in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't have.
Where did you stand, if you gave it any thought, on Chloe Schwarbrick's bill that failed, and I'm pleased it did, where people could grow their own?
No, well, I don't agree with that. No, because if you're growing your own, you've got no idea what you're growing. Whether it's the intoxicating, kind of cannabis. You don't know whether what you're growing is the right thing or not. So I believe it should be treated like any other prescription medication, so that you get a prescription for it and you go to the chemist and you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it, Joanna. Thank you.
Bye.
News Talks to me. It's 30 to 10. I just looked up at the screen. I don't do it often, mind you, but I just did. And there was a Muslim woman on. There was one on the breakfast show on television this morning too. No, I don't know why. It doesn't matter. But the reason I mention it is because there is a bit of a to-do in Australia with the Department of Foreign Affairs. The Department of Foreign Affairs getting involved in an Islamic or a Muslim fashion promotion. I'll tell you more a bit later. 12 to 10. Mario, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. I'm sorry to hear that this is your last year, I understand.
Yeah, but let's not dwell on it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I mean,
you people keep mentioning this. I'm going to cry one day.
Okay,
Stop it.
You are okay. I want to point out that you are an exceptional radio host in New Zealand.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway,
No,
okay, let's go to the topic. Let's go to what I'm calling about. I mean, the main point. So what Trump was talking about, I think he was actually okay. It is. We can talk about iatrogenesis, which is a word invented to describe death by medicine. And in New Zealand, you got like roughly 4,000 people died by medicine yearly. In the States, it's like 700 daily, which is the similar percentage. So these are deaths caused by overprescription, drugs themselves, or mistakes. So this opiates thing comes into the same sort of, caused by the same iatrogenesis.
So what's the point you're making, that there is a parallel based on population size?
That's right. So roughly you could say New Zealand 4,000, in the States I think that would be 40,000. In Australia, because they have 5 times more people, it's 20 million, so that's like 20,000 people yearly are killed by medicine.
What do you mean killed by medicine?
Well, you see, these opiates thing can lead to death. That is
so you're talking. What you mean is you're saying that many people die each year by. I've got echo on the line. By taking opioids. That's what I'm presuming you're saying. But that echo on the line, I can't work with it. Mario, appreciate it. Thank you. It's 10 to 10. News talk to me. It's 8 to 10. My team of researchers has been at work. That is you. For instance, The Atlantic magazine, occasionally they do have some good articles, occasionally. But The Atlantic published an article last year that highlighted some interesting discoveries. Firstly, it appears that depression, one of the most common medical diagnoses in the US, might be one underlying cause that's driving some to the use of prescription opioids improperly. Well, you've only got to go to the Rust Belt to see that. They've done numerous stories and documentaries on Rust Belt opioid deaths and what have you. Secondly, people with depression tend to be more pain sensitive and were therefore about twice as likely as non-depressed people to misuse painkillers for non-pain symptoms and treat it as some form of antidepressant. And thirdly, they also found that depressed people tend to keep using opioids even when their pain has subsided. An opioid-induced heavenly experience could easily be addictive. Oh, yeah. They also mention that opioid misuse could be due to the underdiagnosis of depression in rural areas of the country. However, I reckon the reverse is also true, in that there is probably an overdiagnosis of depression in urban areas, writes my researcher. Do you like the promotion? That's in the Atlantic magazine, Atlantic.com, in the health section from what would be May of last year. Depression contributing to the opioid epidemic. What was the other depression story that was around that I spotted recently? Oh, yes. Dare I mention it? Global warming. Thinking about global warming is depressing a lot of people. With some people it's just self-induced. It's 9:05 to 10. Now, here's a commentary from one of my medical advisors. There's a qualified person who prefers to remain anonymous. Any analgesic medication will cause the body to build up a tolerance to that medication by blocking the receptors responsible for a pain response. With prolonged use, the receptor requires a higher dose to maintain the receptor's tolerance to that medication. The liver and kidneys break down and excrete the waste products of these medications, but with prolonged insult to these two vital organs, prolonged insult. It's very creative. To these two vital organs, organ failure will result. When opioids and benzodiazepines, as in Valium, are used together, it could cause profound sedation, respiratory depression, coma, and death. Keep that in mind, folks. Combine this with the high doses due to an increased tolerance and the underlying organ failure that is occurring in the background, there is a recipe for disaster. In my experience, writes my medical advisor, the hallucinogenic effect, that is the good effect, causes the euphoria, and that's the Achilles heel with all aspects of pain management. In the main, GPs manage this as best they can. However, if the addiction becomes a problem, the subterfuge becomes rife and is difficult to manage when we have a variety of agencies dealing with health. The use of these types of medications need to be strongly regulated, and any relaxation in the management of these opioids will be catastrophic. So to wrap it up, benzos and opioids are a fatal mix. With good clinical management and follow-up death with, read it again. To wrap it up, benzos and opioids are a fatal mix. Without good clinical management and follow-up, death will result prematurely. So there's some good, sound, solid advice. And obviously one of the reasons that there is as much opioid-caused death in the United States as there is, and patently in other places as well. In other matters this morning, Bitcoin and blockchain are on my agenda. I'd like to get onto it a bit because I've been sitting on this particular aspect of, or this story, or this aspect of the Bitcoin and blockchain for a few days. And I know that there is widespread interest in it. But wait until you hear the reason I want to mention blockchain. It's a fascinating angle, fascinating aspect of it, and I'm particularly interested in albeit by my own admission, I know damn all about it in quantum computing and its development. And there is, I was going to say, an increasing amount of information, of stuff being written on it. I'm not sure that I'm right in saying an increasing amount. Maybe it was always, maybe it's been there for a while and I'm just starting to notice it. It's a bit like cars, you know. You've never seen a car before, this particular car, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. News talks to me at 7 after 10. Blockchain in a short while. But there's some catch-up that I want to do. The opinion of, or the attitude toward the matter that's been under discussion from the libertarian fraternity has revealed itself. Take it as you will. Why do we not ignore the people who take drugs? It's their body and their life. If they want to screw up, why can't they? Well, there's an answer to that, or a response. From your callers, there are a lot of people who take drugs every day for pain and still function in society. And if they function at 80% of the rest of us, that's quite acceptable. Most bureaucrats can only manage that. Jeez, you think more highly of them than I do. If others want to take these drugs for recreation, so what? Are we such killjoys that we need to take the pleasures away from others as well as denying ourselves? The war on drugs has been a total failure. Drugs are cheaper and more widely available than they were in the 1930s when they started the debacle. How many generations does it take for us to realize that certain government policies don't work? How much does this war on drugs cost compared with having drugs freely available? The best incentive not to take drugs is to step over addicts dying in the gutter. Hiding them away and treating them at the public's expense only makes the problem worse. This is a failure from so many angles, and all because some people hate others enjoying themselves. Well, Keithy, you must have come in halfway through or something. The point being that the opioid epidemic is not recreational. Oh, part of it might be. But the concern is over people overdosing without realizing what they're doing because they're trying to knock the pain on the head. And if you missed it, Tom Petty died from an accidental overdose of opioids. Body was full of drugs, but the legitimate kind. Because specifically, not just his knee pain, not just because of his, what was it? Something else, but because a fractured hip. No, there was something else, Mrs. P, that I was thinking of at the beginning, emphysema or something. Anyway, he had a fractured hip, and he did 53 dates. And while he did, performances, and while he did those, went on tour and did all those, the hip got worse. And so in the end, it was an actual break. And the pain was so bad, they've worked out, they decided the pain was so bad that he took too many opioids, and that's what killed him. So that's what it's about. Now, that's not fun. That's not recreational in this particular case. And now the medical fraternity here is concerned with regard to the same thing happening. It is happening already, apparently. And if you wanted to look at it on a population basis, it's well, I'm not going to put an attitude to that, but it's probably substantial. Secondly, so I've got to eliminate a bit of this, the intro. And so India uses curcumin in so many foods, spices and diets that it's like it's going out of fashion. Let me pause there. I love Indian food. And when we were last year, well, I was anyway, developing an interest in turmeric, I remember asking at the restaurant, now what's got turmeric in it? Nothing. I think there might have been something that had a tiny little bit, but nothing to speak of. And I was very disappointed. Because I'm going to eat turmeric, I want to eat an Indian food, and I expect to. So, is 2.5 million in India with cancer low? Cancer statistics in India, estimated number of people living with the disease, around 2.5 million. Every year, new cancer patients registered over 7. I don't understand the next LAKH, what that is. Cancer-related deaths, 5,056,400. Deaths in the age group between 30 and 69 total 3,095,400, which is 71% of all cancer-related deaths. Men, 2 million. You've missed out a digit in these. 2,100,000, and women 1.95 million. I don't know what I get from those figures, but thank you for sending them. 13 after 10. News Talk ZB. There's a lot more I could deliver on opioids and associated matters. There was one in particular that I think I'll park for the moment, but, here's another headline. Why fentanyl is deadlier than heroin. And the one that I was talking about, tramadol versus codeine, I might park that and utilise it a little later if, shall we say, it's warranted. Now, on another matter altogether, blockchain. What do you know about blockchain? Not much. I claim to know not much. But I have an increasing appetite for information on blockchain. This particular headline from the Wall Street Journal caught my attention. You think of blockchain as something that you utilize for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. You think of it for maybe banking, because the banks are working on it furiously, and they will employ it shortly if they're not already. How about this? How blockchain can end poverty. How blockchain can end poverty. Bit of detail after the break. 18 after 10. Paulie. Paulie's writing to me from the vineyard in Hawke's Bay and asking me a question about aspects of something to do with vine growing. As to the other matter, by the way, hashtag me too. Hashtag me too. Now, blockchain. This comes from a completely different angle from the one that you would expect. However, it's interesting. Now, this runs 2 foolscap pages, double-spaced, but I'm not going to read it all, but I want to convey the gist of it. Written by Phil Graham, who was a former chairman of the Senate Banking Committee in the US. a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, and also by Hernando de Soto, the author of the book The Mystery of Capital, and a former CEO of UEC, which is Switzerland's largest consulting engineering firm. Couple of heavyweights, you might say, in this particular, the business world. For a long time, Western economists have failed to appreciate the relationship between private property rights and economic development. There's still a lot in New Zealand who do. Karl Marx saw private property as the source of wealth and called for its elimination to promote equality. You know, the sort of equality where everybody's dumbed down and cast down to the lowest common denominator so that they share equal misery, as the saying goes. But Karl Marx was a specialist of that. A century and a half later, we know that a country without a formal system for registering property rights limits its own economic development and prevents its citizens from realising their full potential. It's a simple yet startling fact. The road to economic development runs through the county clerk's office at the local courthouse. The great economic divide in the world today is between the 2.5 billion people who can register property rights and the 5 billion who are impoverished, in part because they can't. Consider what happens without a formal system of property rights. Values are reduced for privately owned assets, wages are devalued for workers using these assets, owners are denied the ability to use their assets as collateral to obtain credit or as a credential to claim public services. The society loses the benefits that accrue when assets are employed for their highest and best purpose. The Institute for Liberty and Democracy, founded by Hernando de Soto in 1979, estimates that 2/3 of the world's population lacks access to a formal system of property rights, resulting in underdeveloped resources and assets worth an estimated 170 trillion, or 63% of the value of the assets of the US. Increasingly sophisticated data from surveys, satellite photos, and global positioning systems have resulted in organised knowledge about the location of every visible asset on Earth. Yet outside the developed world and some advanced regions of developing countries, there are no accessible records detailing who owns those assets. 40 years ago, one of us, as one of the two authors, Hernando de Soto, discovered that even in the most primitive societies, records exist on who owns what. Based on this discovery, ILD undertook an organised effort in Peru to begin to assimilate and formalise those records to establish a registry of property ownerships. In 1980, the communist terrorist insurgency known as Shining Path won support among the poor indigenous people of Peru by enforcing primitive property rights at the point of a gun. We first collaborated in 1990 when Peru sought American assistance to replace the gun with the rule of law by officially recognising that the indigenous Peruvians' primitive property records were legal proof of ownership. At that point, the Shining Path controlled 60% of Peru's territory, and the Rand Corp was predicting that Lima would fall as early as 1992. One of us, Phil Graham, then a US Senator, helped obtain funding for ILD's property registration effort, and ultimately the formation of an alliance between Peru's army and the farmers and miners who were eager to fight for their newly won property rights. By providing these indigenous people with formal proof of property ownership, property rights registration reached through their wallets and touched their hearts and minds with a conviction that comes only from defending your own property. Indigenous Peruvians overwhelmed the communist terrorists. Hooray! Shining Path leaders surrendered, opting for the safety of prison over the wrath of Peru's indigenous poor. The terrorist commander, Abimael Guzman, specifically blamed the property rights conceived and implemented by Hernando de Soto and his American supporters for Shining Path's defeat. The leader of the terrorist Shining Path said that's why we got defeated. It's not just some claim by, a couple of academics or anybody else. The US has never won a war against communism or terrorism with so little blood and treasure. But of course, we have seldom had an ally like private property rights on our side. Now, I could carry on and give you a bit more of that, but I won't. I'll cut to the quick. Fortunately, there is a new technology that could make a global property rights registration system feasible. Patrick Byrne, an e-commerce pioneer and the CEO of Overstock.com, has committed a professional staff and significant resources to modernising the collection and maintenance of property rights records on a global scale. Blockchain is an especially promising technology because of its record-keeping capacity, its ability to provide access to millions of users, and the fact that it can be constantly updated as property ownership changes hands. If blockchain technology can empower public and private efforts to register property rights on a single computer platform, we can share the blessings of property rights, of private property registration with the whole world. Instead of destroying private property to promote a Marxist equality and poverty, perhaps we can bring property rights to all mankind. Where property rights are ensured, so are the prosperity, the freedom, and the ownership of wealth that brings real stability and peace. Make of that what you want, what you will, but to me it's interesting. At the very, very least. News talk to me 27 after 10. So to me the article was interesting simply because it's a new development, if you like, that undoubtedly has great benefits. And by the way, the reasoning that they put to it with regard to fighting, ending poverty and fighting communism, to me, is the best aspect of it of all. Great news if it works. Well, go back to the second sentence in that article. Karl Marx saw private property as the source of wealth and called for its elimination to promote equality. They drag everybody down instead of lifting people up. Therein lies the difference between laissez-faire capitalism and communism. Polar opposites. And anything that does that will get promoted on this program. It is 28 to 11. News talks about numbers 0800 80 1080. I'm getting, as I always do, I'm getting opposing opinions on various things, such as, stand by, such as, all evidence, writes Claire, all evidence in favour of turmeric is anecdotal. There is no scientific evidence to say that it has any benefits. The ad on TV these days is very slick, but only hints that turmeric can help. On their website, they say, can help, can assist, has a range of health benefits, etc. People are gullible. About 10 years ago, I severely hurt my back for several hours. I literally couldn't move. Opioids were not offered. Instead, I rotated Nurofen and Panadol. It took 6 months for my back to heal with stretching and exercise. And most of the people in the US who are dying are not getting... Right. Oh, it was the turmeric aspect of it that I wanted, and then it goes on to talk about personal experience. Then I get the following. Lot of evidence for many benefits from curcumin, the primary active ingredient in turmeric. Turmeric was once known, most known, for being a flavourful or colourful addition to curry. But in the scientific world, turmeric has earned a reputation for being a multifaceted healer. Turmeric contains curcumin, which has notable anti-inflammatory properties. It can inhibit both the activity and the synthesis of COX2 and a couple of other things. Al, I'm not going to try and command those, as well as other enzymes that have been implicated in inflammation. A 2006 study found that a turmeric extract compound of curcuminoids blocked inflammatory pathways, effectively preventing the launch of a protein that triggers swelling and pain. Turmeric has been found to significantly, by the way, talk about swelling and pain. I'm going completely left field in just a minute because I've come across something that I'm interested in. Turmeric has been found to significantly improve post-operative pain and fatigue, And in a study, osteoarthritis patients who had added only 200 milligrams of Circumin a day to their treatment plan had reduced pain and increased mobility. Time magazine, I don't believe anything in Time. Seriously, I don't. It might be true, but I don't believe it until I've verified it. What I'm saying is I do not accept as a truth anything that Time publishes unless it's verified. Time magazine even published the story of one doctor who marvelled at one of his older hip patients' lack of pain and remarkably swift recovery from surgery. The patient took turmeric regularly, I'd prefer to say regularly, and the results so impressed the physician that he began taking the supplement himself. Now, that other story will involve some of you, because you will not be able to wait to tell me your version of it when I get to it in a minute. But I have a vested interest in it. Stand by for detail. Because in looking for something else, I came across this story. I didn't know it was a bit of a bun fight on the Stuff website earlier this week. Spider experts claim nothing to fear in a whitetail's venom, but those bitten who don't believe it. And there are two pictures of people who've been bitten, one on an ankle and one on a back. If you've been bitten by... Well, hang on, let me quote you. A Stuff story published on Wednesday about the aggressive spider stoked a fire under people who claim to have been bitten by a whitetail and had adverse reaction. In that story, arachnologist Grace Hall of Landcare Research said people should not be concerned about whitetail spiders, as while their bite was painful, there was nothing in the venom that could hurt people. If you've been bitten by a whitetail, or someone close to you has, for instance, you've experienced it from, the close quarters, what do you say to that? The only person that I'm familiar with whom I'm familiar, who's been bitten recently relatively recently, was my man John, who runs the vineyard. And he actually got bitten in the vineyard with a whitetail on a vine. He was leaf plucking or something, I've forgotten. And he got bitten. It blew up enormously. He went to the doctor, and it caused him some considerable grief. Now, when they say there's nothing to... What was the term? There's nothing to... pain was... the bite was painful, nothing in the venom that could hurt people. So if you've been bitten by a whitetail, do you agree with that or otherwise? Seriously, I want to know. I am very cautious with regard to whitetails. I killed a monster on the weekend, just gone. It gives me some sense of satisfaction. And I don't think it matters where you live. They will find their way into your house eventually. I doubt there's anybody who's listening who hasn't had an experience with a whitetail somewhere somehow. But if you've been bitten by one, like I say, I want to know your reaction. Painful? Damaging? I mean, just tell us. Cherie, good morning.
Hi, Leighton. You were just talking about the whitetail spider.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when I was in primary school, my teacher got bitten by one in the class, and he actually developed necrosis from the bite. And then when I mentioned that to my partner, who's driving, he pointed out that, when they do the tests on the spiders in the labs, they do tend to be quite isolated. Whereas when they're in nature, they're going around and eating all these other spiders. And if they have eaten a spider that does have a bit of a toxic venom to us, and then they bite us directly after, that could be what's causing the problem. And they wouldn't find that in the lab because they're not eating other spiders in the lab.
It's interesting. Very.
So,
how did they fix it?
Sorry?
How did they fix it?
Well, don't they, what I've seen when they do tarantulas, they get them to...
No, I mean the teacher.
Oh, my teacher?
Yeah.
He turned out fine by the end of it. It's just I can quite specifically remember that he got bitten and he ended up taking quite a bit of time off school because it had, started to rot around the bite site. I was quite young. I was only in year 5 or something.
Right.
So I don't remember heaps about it, but I remember that he took a fair amount of time off because he'd been bitten by a whitetail in the class when he'd been reading a story to us, and it had gotten quite nasty and infected.
Intriguing, very intriguing. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.
Have a good weekend. By the way, are you taking an extra long weekend, or are you working on Monday? She done gone. Kate, morning.
Hi, Leighton. I was bitten by a whitetail on my top of my finger a couple of years ago, and it was so painful. I spent $100 to go to an after-hours clinic. They put me on antibiotics, and then by the next morning, the tip of my finger had turned black, and I ended up spending 9 days in hospital with that and having to have the necrosing tissue cut out, and then 2 weeks with a district nurse coming round to dress it and take care of it. So, yeah, for me it was a significant event.
See, I'm intrigued by your reaction. Stand by. I'm looking for something. I'm intrigued by your reaction, and as opposed to the commentary by this Grace Hall from Landcare Research. And I don't imagine that you're on your own.
No, well, the surgeon said to me after he'd cut away the dead tissue, he said I was really lucky not to lose my finger because the infection was so aggressive.
And you're sure it was a whitetail?
Well, that's what the doctor and the surgeon said to me, that it was a whitetail bite. And we had whitetails. We found a whitetail near where I was sitting when I was bitten. So I didn't actually see the spider bite me, but all indications point to that.
All right. Thank you. Good weekend to you also.
Thanks, Leighton. Bye.
John, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Yeah, they don't have venom as such. They tend to pick up bacteria, any sort of bacteria, and once they bite and they get into the bloodstream, that's when the bite turns to septic. And some people can lose all sorts of parts of their body if they're not careful with it. We've had an experience in Christchurch. One of my staff members who was very scruffy and used to leave his clothes all lying on the floor, and we said, look, there's whitetails here, don't do that. Well, he did. He picked up his shirt, put it on, and wham, he got one right in his back. And by the time we got to Wellington, which was 3 days later, it had swollen up to about the size of probably 10 centimetres. He went to hospital and had to have that dug out, and they literally dug it right out of his body. And so that's the only way to cure it.
Wow.
And then antibiotics, of course.
Yep. All right.
So, yeah.
It is, I understand, very painful, which is enough reason to avoid the little buggers on its own. But what I'm intrigued with is either the audacity of this arachnologist to say, well, you shouldn't be too worried about it, because it's not so bad. There was nothing in the venom that could hurt people. Well, I'm open-minded to that, but that's not the point. To say that you shouldn't be too worried about them. If there are other reasons why they bite, apart from the venom, separately from the venom, is going to give you grief, then that's every reason to be nervous of them.
Absolutely. Totally.
All right.
Totally.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Okay, cheers, mate.
News Talk ZB, it's 11 to 11. I was looking for, at the end of the article, a moment ago, I was looking for some confirmation of what I was thinking. According to Mousdale, most people who have commented haven't seen the spider or know when it's bitten them. Most people who have commented haven't seen the spider or know when it's bitten them. You always feel when a whitetail bites you. It's very painful. She said anyone bitten by a whitetail was encouraged to clean the site and then apply ice. I would suggest taking an antihistamine, and then if they have a reaction, go to the doctor. He said, like anything that pierced the skin, there was a possibility that bacteria could enter the wound. Well, that was what a previous caller said. Someone from Timaru said he was bitten by a whitetail in Perth last year. I didn't see the spider at all. I think it was in my shoe, but I felt the bite start to sting after a while. He left it for a day or so. He said 3 days later the wound had ballooned. I was advised by a nurse friend to go straight to emergency when she took a look. He was admitted to hospital where doctors were concerned about the infection getting into his bloodstream. Well, seeing how far after the bite it was, I'm surprised that it wasn't there already. Anyway, he spent 4 days. It was then determined it was from a whitetail. He spent 4 days in hospital. A couple of other examples also. 9 to 11. News talk to be 7 to 11. Dan, morning.
Good morning, Leighton. How are you? Sorry to hear that you're going, of course. I'm going to miss the talkback, but only get an opportunity when I'm off on a long weekend. Made it actually the Friday to the Monday off, so I got an extended long weekend.
Lucky you.
Very fortunate. Yeah, about the whitetails, I was bitten 3 times, saw the spider each time, twice on the end of my finger, and I was very fortunate. Nothing happened. And most recently was on my face where it bit just underneath my eye. And I used a little device that sort of stops mosquitoes and other bites itching. And I sort of applied it to where the bite was. Again, it hurt for a few seconds. And I thought I'd basically try to use heat to denature maybe whatever toxins or whatever was going on, and then put a little bit of topical steroid. Watching it, of course, just underneath my eye, I was concerned, of course, my whole face blowing up, because I had heard of people being admitted to hospital because of spider bites, and in particular whitetails. So, I monitored it, and fortunately I got away with, just a little bit of a red mark on it.
Now, tell me how on earth you got one on your face.
I was having a shower, and I think there's a vent where the spider managed to climb on top of the towel. Unwittingly, I didn't see it there, of course, wrapping my body in a towel, and it obviously came down and caught my face, and then I saw it on the shower floor and immediately flushed it down the sinkhole.
Interesting, because I long ago adopted the habit of, when the towel's in the bathroom, of giving it a good shake before I get in the shower.
I learnt that myself, and I do that every morning now.
It's very wise of you. Isn't experience a wonderful teacher?
It is indeed. It is indeed.
All right. Good on you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Megan, morning.
Good morning, Leighton.
You don't say Megan, do you?
No, if you're in Wales, you do. It depends whether people are in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere as to what I get called, and it doesn't worry me at all.
Okay. Hey, you.
Hey, look, it was about 26 years ago that I was bitten by a whitetail, and ironically, I was actually in a shower over a bath, shampooing my hair, and it felt like a nerve twinge. And of course, I didn't have my eyes open, but it just kept on going on the inside of my foot. And so I opened my eyes, and I couldn't believe this black thing. So I went and got my flannel and just flicked it up with it. And my husband got a jar. And it was positively ID'd by over Mount Albert. And I ended up, after about a week, I ended up having what we call a pyrexia of unknown origin. Couldn't find a reason for any reason why I was running a temperature. I'd had seen my GP, and he was so concerned. He said it's a spider. He said I'd get that ID'd so knew what it was. So I took the spider off and, yes, got it ID'd. But I ended up with glandular fever. And I was as sick as a dog with glandular fever. They were on the verge of admitting me because I just couldn't keep anything down. And
how did they relate that directly to the spider bite?
They won't relate that to the spider bite at all. I had to take almost a cleave. They didn't believe that it was related to the spider bite, but a colleague of my husband's had actually not long got over glandular fever, and he'd been bitten by a whitetail as well. Then I know another guy that was a colleague of my husband's as well, and he put his gumboots on, and he got bitten, and he ended up with arrhythmias.
None of this sounds like fun to me.
Yes.
Well,
So
at least we can be grateful that we don't have funnel web spiders.
Exactly. But the funny part was I ended up filling out the ACC form because it was a spider bite. My GP said, look, it's spider bite. You obviously...
And your New Zealand Herald today.
7 after 11. Email is leighton@newstalk.co.nz and you can text on 9292. My report is the same as the other callers state. My elderly mother in a rest home with open windows and garden around the windows was bitten on the shoulder by a whitetail when she was sitting near a window. The bite swelled red. The area went black in 1 day. In 3 days, the tissue necrotized and had to be cut out. The scare exists to this day. It spread fast. The doctor said there are cases of, where risk of losing a limb can arise. So why do the government departments so often play down issues, deny when the facts are real, and refuse to report risks and that are not consistent with government policy? I can't answer that. Well, I can, but I won't. I can't. Wouldn't be appropriate at this particular point. People are sending me lots of pictures of the results of whitetail bites. Some of them are, well, most of them are unpleasant. Some are exceedingly unpleasant. Somebody sent me, Julia sent me a picture of her nephew's wound. And it's right on it's on the left hand, or is it, no, it's on the right hand. It's very close up. It's the right hand little finger. And the Band-Aid has been lifted off it, being held off it, and it's a gaping wound. In other words, it's got infected or it's developed, and it's ugly as. So, I don't care what this woman says. I'll kill every whitetail I can see before it gets me. Tony, good morning.
Good morning.
Talk to me.
One of your previous callers says that the whitetail, the bite is just a collection of fungus or something, if I can remember correctly.
Bacteria, I think was the term.
Yeah, the whitetail is actually a poisonous spider. It accumulates, it eats other spiders, and it accumulates the poison from the spiders it consumes, and it builds up into its bite. So that they could be a fallacy. They are a poisonous spider.
How do you know?
Because I'm a pest control operator, and I've studied them. I've been in the business for 22 years. And
ever been bitten by one?
I have indeed, on my ear. But I have O negative blood, so it probably wouldn't affect me as much as it affects other people. So people get the effect is different in different people. It just affects them in different ways.
That's what I was saying to a caller earlier. But it depends. It's what can we say? It's an individual thing, an individual reaction.
Yeah, I mean, my ear sort of swollen up within minutes, and it went down, and I had no need to go to the doctor. But it was very, very painful. But and they're very hard to detect because they don't have a web.
No,
they go and search. They live in dark places like ceilings and cupboards, and you go in search of other spiders. So, in effect, if you have your home treated for spiders or sprayed for normal spiders, you take away their food source, and therefore you also take away the whitetail.
Yeah, highly. Well, Mrs. Producer's saying, "Do you though?" I think that Mrs. P. I think Tony is probably more correct than non. It would reduce the chances. Let's put it that way. Would that be fair enough?
It would dramatically reduce them, yes, because they have no food source. So,
I'll accept that.
And they don't go looking for humans to bite.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.
You have a good day, man.
Stay safe. It is 11:12. My partner, writes Monique, my partner had a nasty experience with the whitetail while helping me move in with him. That'll teach you. There was a whitetail in my basement, and we didn't know it was there. What it was. The finger was swollen, and we were bathing it in nothing. Sorry, we were bathing it, but nothing was helping. And then after 2 days, it was a mess. So we went to A&E, and they were astonished at how bad it was. He even documented it for prosperity, perhaps. See attached. There is no attached. Stand by. Here we are. Sorry, forgot the pics. A couple of emails later. Let's have a look. Very unpleasant. Putting me off my lunch, to be honest. It was in the middle finger, between the hand and the first joint. There you go. Very unpleasant. 13 after 11. John, morning.
Oh, morning, Leighton. I just thought I'd phone in, somewhat saddened to hear that you'll be giving away your marvellous Talkback radio show.
Well, I'm not giving it away.
Or retiring. So
Can I just suggest to you that there will be a presence maintained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But will it continue your fine tradition of PC-free, candid commentary on the issues of the day?
Well, you have to wait and see.
Okay. Yeah. We'll do exactly that. But I just thought I'd mention that in passing. So I'm sure a lot of people would concur with that. Yeah.
Whitetails?
No, I only ones on two legs. There are enough of those around. That's another story.
All right.
But, good on you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. All right.
14 after 11. This is more personal than anything else, so I shan't read it. Just so happens I just opened it right then. There's been a couple of inquiries with regard to the blockchain story. The blockchain story is entitled How Blockchain Can End Poverty. It is from the Wall Street Journal, which is behind a paywall. However, if you did a search, How Blockchain Can End Poverty, you may be able to access it through another site. You can only give it a shot. I can't tell you, because if I do it, if I Google it or search it, I'm trying to avoid the Google word, and bring it up somewhere else, it'll open for me anyway, because I'm logged in. You know what I'm saying? 15 past 11, News Talk TV. Doris Mousdale, by the way, at 11:39 and a half or something thereabouts.
To over 14,000 homes, GJ's.
Something else I want to get on to before Doris gets here this morning with regard to a conversation I had with a caller earlier in the week. I've got QED for it. Joy, good morning.
Good morning, Leighton. Spider bites, whitetail. For anyone that wants to have a cure for it, the kawa ointment that the Maori make up will heal it very quickly.
When you say heal it? Yep,
it heals it. It clears it up completely.
If you get it on quickly?
No.
Well, if it develops into some of the things that I've seen in pictures this morning, I'd be careful or cautious.
No, I've had 4 cases that I've healed for people. One on myself, which I did pretty quickly, and that healed it up once I realised what it was. One girl had a bite on herself for 2 months, and it hadn't healed. Within 2 ointments of it, it healed up.
When you say it hadn't healed after 2 months, what had happened to it?
It disinfected.
No.
Nothing the doctors could give her would heal it. They put antibiotics and everything on it, and it wouldn't heal it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just put kawa ointment on it, and within 2-3 days, it was gone.
Where do you get kawa ointment?
I got it from a guy in Timaru about 10 years ago, and I've had the ointments with me. But apparently different Maori groups actually make it up.
So you can't buy it commercially?
No, you can't, unfortunately. Because if I could go and buy it now, I'd go and buy 2 or 3 bottles and keep it handy.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely brilliant, and I've seen 4 cases heal up straight away, and one was a nurse, and she couldn't get it healed by anything.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. State of play. All right, Joy. Appreciate it. Thank you. Nancy, morning.
Hello, Leighton. I had a house in Wanaka about 20 years ago, and my husband was tidying up a cabbage tree, and as you know, they've always got a lot of, cobwebs in it, and he was bitten in the ankle. The next day we came back to Dunedin, and his ankle and foot was black and swollen, and he went straight to the doctor, and he was given antibiotics, and he had to have his foot up for 3 or 4 days, and it took ages. And the person that said you only get venom from a whitetail if they've ingested another spider that has poison. Well, at Wanaka, they don't have any kind of vicious spiders that have poison apart from the whitetail. And that was right at the very beginning when they didn't know much about them, and there wasn't many around, but they were first found down in Wanaka, and a leading spider specialist from Dunedin, she had warned people about them and said that they were in Wanaka, just be careful. And lo and behold, he got one, and I tell you, that really set him off. He had ill health after that. I'm not blaming that, but it was really nasty, and that's 20 years ago. The doctor said that he'd had quite a few people in with bites from these spiders from Wanaka, and that he just couldn't understand how so much damage could be done from a little spider. Unbelievable.
When was that?
20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my advice to anyone that's pulling off the dead leaves or whatever it is you pull off cabbage trees, cover yourself. He was in jandals and a bathing suit, and although he had gloves.
Prime target.
Yeah, he should have had, even though he had gloves, no, it did so much damage. We couldn't wait to get back to our doctor. It was unbelievable.
All right. Nancy, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. News Talk to be 11:23. Yes, after the break, a referral back to a conversation I had with a caller during the week. So too, stand by. News Talk to be 11:26. Earlier in the week, I was having a discussion with a caller with regard to peer review and grants, etc., at universities. And it was an interesting discussion. I can't remember exactly his position in it, but he proffered some, more confirmed some interesting information. And so, off the back of that, I want to quote you the following. The peer review system for deciding what scientific research gets published and what doesn't. What I can remember is it was to do with science, and it was to do with a breakthrough that a professor at Auckland University, I'm sure that's correct, a professor at Auckland University was working on and got denied the ability to proceed with it. And we arrived at the point where it was a protective measure because it undermined prevailing thoughts. So the peer review system for deciding what scientific research gets published and what doesn't used to work pretty well, but like so much in academia, is now in trouble. In an article, Duke University neuroscience professor John Staton reflects on the changes. For one thing, researchers now spend up to half of their time just writing grant proposals, the large majority of which are rejected. For another, the career needs to get papers published. I read this earlier this morning, didn't notice this. The career needs to get papers published. That's led to a vast proliferation of journals, many of them bogus. Staton writes, a growing list of what I call pop-up journals has arisen to meet the need for publication. I get email invitations to publish in or even edit such a journal almost once a week. Here is one headed Invitation to Join Editorial Board. And then he quotes what it is, doesn't matter. The article that so piqued the respondents' interest was an obituary for a much-loved younger colleague. His research had nothing to do whatever with finance. The invitation comes from a bot, not a human being. Another more serious problem, in Staddon's opinion, is that peer review tends to favour, and this is the connection I was making, tends to favour established views in science at the expense of unconventional ones. The tougher problem is that journal reviewers may reinforce a kind of scientific establishment in a Times Higher Ed article titled Scientific Peer Review, an Ineffective and Unworthy Institution, the author's comment. And I haven't got time to go into it, but you know exactly what he's saying, and you can guess where how they were commenting. It is vested interests and protection of them that is half the problem. And there is no greater field where this is applicable, than climate science. News talks to me, it's 27 to 11. Already there's inquiry over that. Here's what you do, folks. Peer review. Stand by. Here's a better one. The Times Higher Ed article. Scientific peer review. If you type that in, you'll get a list of articles. You want the one that then says an ineffective and unworthy institution. Scientific peer review. An ineffective and unworthy institution. I drove through the city this morning. I had cause. I never do this. In fact, I hate driving through Auckland City at any time at the moment. I mean the CBD, simply because of how much work's going on. Although this morning's journey wasn't too bad because it was at 5:45. But I came down Shortland Street and turned right into Queen Street, and immediately saw two men sleeping in a doorway. And I thought, well, let's have a look. Let's see how many more there are. Because last time we discussed it, last year, there were people everywhere sleeping in the streets. They were the only two. That's it. From Shortland Street down to the bottom, they were the only two. I was actually stunned. But they were well and truly asleep. They weren't going anywhere in a hurry. Part of the reason for wanting to mention that was a story I found when I got to work. Los Angeles homelessness surged 75% in 6 years. Here's why the crisis has been decades in the making. Well, we won't be going into that today, but they're talking now that the figure is roughly 55,000 people sleeping on the streets in Los Angeles. Now, keep in mind something very important. California is the socialist capital of the United States. How could they possibly have 55,000 people sleeping in the streets? See if you can work it out. Bit of homework for the weekend. 21 to 12, News Talks to me. Doris next. News Talks to me, it's 18 to 12. I just got a nasty email that says, Mrs. Producer, listen, some people are so nasty. Go back on holiday. I've enjoyed free mornings when you were away and got a lot done. I don't need to go on. Now, the laugh that you heard was from Doris. From, where are you? Arcadia Books, 26, what street? I've forgotten. Osborne Street in Newmarket. Is it still there?
Only just, yes, it is. It is only just.
Now, 277's closed down.
Yes. Oh, it's in the throes of closing down.
And you're a bit removed from them.
Yes, we're more towards the other end.
Yeah, but how has it affected?
It will affect it. It's going to go on for 2 years. The first phase of it will be finished in a year, but it will go on for a year after that while they finish the second part. But in the meantime, we've also got lots of other building and roadworks going on. And Auckland, can I say Auckland Bloody Transport on air?
You bet.
Think they can rule. They do rule the roads, and so they are blocking roads off. We've got 2 lanes where we used to have 4 lanes. We've got streets blocked off. We've got extra traffic lights going in to help people cross the road I've never seen a person on that piece of pavement in 8 years, but there wasn't traffic lights in to help them cross the road. So it's huge turmoil.
The transport part of that name is fake because they hate transport.
They say get on a bike or get on a bus. One, there are no buses. Two, my average age of my customer is over 50 and they don't have bikes. You know, we've got disabled customers who need help taking their shopping to their cars.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to get on a bike. So it's this new group of people there who think they rule the roost and are making us do things that we don't want to do.
They hate cars.
Yes,
that's
they hate
point
cars,
one.
absolutely. In 10 years, we're all going to be on a bike.
And what's more, they're not fond of people.
No, they don't like people, but they have Auckland Transport parking spaces and they have the use of Auckland Transport cars.
And they've never been in business, wouldn't have a clue.
No, it's our money is paying their wages and they've never been out on the street earning their living.
And they've paid much too much.
And they've got too much power.
So, anyway, do you think they've got the message?
No, they won't have, but we're going to continue. We're going to continue. It's just nasty, naughty, and to be honest, it's if they took all the cones away and all the things, the traffic would run incredibly freely. It's them causing the traffic. There's no traffic jams without the traffic cones. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
I've had a wonderful time reading lots of books. I've sat outside afternoon, reading all the sorts of books that I wanted to read, but also on listeners' behalves. And I've got some good ones here. Some you might agree with, some you might not, and some I didn't agree with. First up, though, I'll talk very quickly about Fire and Fury inside the Trump White House. It came in. We had to order it blind, when they just send you an email and say, order this book. We ordered it. It came in. It sold pretty quickly. They reprinted. I think they're up to 1.7 million at the moment. And people want to know about it. And the interesting thing is sometimes New Zealanders don't want to know about American politics, but I think he's in the headlights and they do want to know more. It's not a bad book. It's not a great book. It's a book that's padded out. He did go to the White House 20 times. He did sit in the lobby and he did meet people and he gossiped and he acquired the information and then he's written the book. And that's for the readers to decide whether they like it or not and whether they believe it or not. But it's there and it is number one everywhere in the world. And it's on the shelf for $38. My next one, I have to say, I didn't enjoy reading it, but she's been in the news and it just shows you how quickly publishers can move now to get topics that are number one in the news out there on the bookshelf. It's Brave by Rose McGowan. Now, she was writing this before she had the interview with the newspaper journalist who then went and told the story about Harvey Weinstein and all the things that went on. Then, of course, we've had the Me Too movement, and all of a sudden we've got no good-looking girls at Formula One. We've got nobody leading them into the darts. You can't say that you agree with some of the actresses and what's been going on at Hollywood, but this is her story. Again, it's not very well written. It's a stream of consciousness. It's how she feels. She was in a family that belonged to a cult, the Children of God in Italy. And she was brought up in a very strange environment, very much like Gloria Vale, that strange communal living. She aspired to be an actress, so she was determined to that, so she went in for a very hard career, and she did make her way up. She did, step by step, force her way up the steps to Hollywood, to fame and glory. And on that way, she was, as she says, taken advantage of, and she's now exposing that, and other people have all jumped on the bandwagon and said, me too. So it's not a nice book to read. It's an interesting book to read. It's not a nice book to read. She doesn't come across as a very nice, kind person, I have to say. But she might have caused, maybe the pendulum had swung too far one way and now it's going too far back the other way, and hopefully it will settle down and we will be able to treat each other with the courtesy and respect that everybody deserves, not just one sex or the other sex, but every sex. And
how many are there?
In my mind, there's only two. You can only be one or the other.
Correct.
You can't be both.
Correct.
But people do deserve respect, no matter whether you're a cleaner in an office or you're the CEO of a company, you have to treat everybody with respect. And obviously it hasn't been going that way, and she has decided to expose. And I don't like the way she blacklists people. You know, she says this person didn't come forward, or I know, like she says, he called Gwyneth Paltrow his special friend. Well, basically that's saying that Gwyneth Paltrow was going along with what Harvey Weinstein wanted. So there you have it, Rose McGowan. It won't be a big seller because all the story has been out there in the news, but there will be people who want to know everything that happens, and that's on the shelf for $35.
Very good. 11 to midday, News Talk Sydney. 9 to midday, Doris Mousdale from Arcadia Books, 26 Osborne Street in Newmarket. By the way, have they finished yet? Have they finished paving your street?
Teed Street, they finished. That's the 3.5 million East German block road that we have, you know, where they've painted yellow lines all the way down one side of the street, so, and taken 23 car parks away and given us plants.
How much they spend?
$3.5 million.
Money's no object when you're not paying.
It's your money, my money. Let's spend it. Now, next book is a book that comes totally left field. I was reading a review about it in the English Sunday Times Culture magazine. And then last week, a rep who I haven't seen for ages called in and he said, I've got this book that I think you'd be interested in. And it's called The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and it's by Heather Morris. Now, Heather Morris is an Australian, and she went on a creative writing course, and she has basically taught herself to write. And in 2003, she met a man called Lale Sokolov and his wife Gita. Now, Gita died in 2003. And Lale wanted to tell her his story. And it's a story of a young man coming from Czechoslovakia in a suit and a white shirt and a tie with his belongings and some money in his pocket and getting on a train because a poster had been put in the village saying, they need workers in Germany. And so he gets on this train and then he realizes that it's not a proper train. It's actually a cattle truck. He's there for days and days. They're squashed together, standing up. There's a lot of people who don't know where they're going, and when they get off, when the train stops and they get off, and people fall to their knees, they're told to leave all their belongings behind, and he has his money on his inside pocket, so he leaves his little suitcase behind, and they are taken to Auschwitz. Now, he's quite a bright person, and he knows that he has to survive, or try to survive, and he gets the job of tattooing the numbers on people's arms, the numbers on Jewish people's arms. He gets the job of being the tattooist. And basically he cuts the number in the arm, then rubs green ink in it. And one day he sees this lovely girl, her name is Gita, and he is determined to survive his time in the Count. So this is how he tries to do good, a bit like... I'm trying to think of the man who's... Dementia. Yes, dementia setting in. Tries to do good, survives, comes out, they go back home to Bratislava, and then they move to Australia. They get married and they move to Australia. And he never talks about it again until Gita dies. And Helen Morris has written this book. She wrote it as a screenplay, and it hasn't been made into a movie. So it's quite erratic writing. And she isn't the best writer, but it's a good book because every story that these people tell is another link in the chain that we need to know, something we need to know, we need to carry on needing to know these stories. And it's the honesty of the story. That's what makes this book extra special. So it's called The Tattooist of Auschwitz. It's by Heather Morris. She has already started writing her second book. But this is basically Lale's memorial. And I do hope people enjoy it. It's going to arrive in the shop. It's being couriered in today, and I will have stock of it. I've got the only copy here. Would you like to take it?
Would I like to take it?
Or I'll bring you one in next week. So that'll be on the shelf this afternoon, and we are taking names for it. So it's The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and the author there is Heather Morris. I think she's going to come over to New Zealand, so she'd be worth talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my next book is perfect for book clubs.
And by the look of it, your last book.
Okay, my last book. Perfect for book clubs because people know her. She wrote a great book called The Nightingale, and it carried on selling for year after year. Her latest one is called The Great Alone, and it's a different time, different place. This time it's the mid-70s. It's the story of a young couple. He's just returned from Vietnam. Life is absolutely distressed for him because of the things he's seen and the things he's had to do. But Cora and Ernst decide that they're going to move away from their normal place of living and go find somewhere decent to live. And so they move to Alaska. And so this is a bit like a pioneer story. It's a couple with their teenage daughter going to start a new life, all the trials and tribulations and the hardness. They're not expecting the weather to be so bad. They're not expecting it to be such a vast place. The isolation, but then the companionship of the people who live there. So it's a great story. It's Kirsten Hanna does do the characters very well. She does do the setting very well. And there's lots of room there for book club discussion.
All right. So, quick wrap.
I started with Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff. That's the inside story of Trump and the White House. Brave by Rose McGowan. She's the starter of the Me Too movement, who's calling names. The Tattoos of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. And Kristen Hanna, her latest new book, which has just been on the shelf a day or two, is called The Great Alone. What, in your estimation, in the next month or two, you pick the period, is the best book that you're expecting? Oh, I think there's one just come in by a man called Mick Heron, which arrived, and I got a reading copy, so I shall settle down with that over the weekend. Okay. London Calls, it's called. Fiction or non-fiction? It's fiction. Fiction. 26 Osborne Street, Newmarket, Arcadia Books. Support Doris in the midst of the bomb site that... Anyway. On the phone, Ed? 522-5211. See you next week. Thank you. Look forward to that. Bye-bye. Now, I shall not be here Monday. There is some personal affairs that need taking care of. And Tuesday's a holiday, of course. No, I'm not taking a holiday on Monday. There's something that is necessary to be done. Just so you know and understand, thank you for appreciating. So back on Wednesday morning at 8:37. Hang on, that was a bit premature. Like you said, back on Wednesday morning at 8:37. Until then, you have a great weekend and take care. Thank you.